So a couple years ago, MadeInNowhere, who I've talked about before here on my YouTube channel, I should say, he did a story, and I talked about it before here as well. He did a story called My Friend's Wife. Now, when this story was made a couple years ago, it was requested by another writer, another Sonic adult writer, if you will, called the Cyborg Fox, or as he's known in other places like inkbunny.net, that one Tales writer. But why did MadeInNowhere make this request for him? Why did he write the story for him, you might ask? Well, basically it's because one of the things that MadeInNowhere and even the Cyborg Fox have in common is they like to do these little one-shots, if you will, individually or as part of a playlist, that involves an aged-up Tales, most of the time, getting it on with a certain female. And you can basically list off all the well-known Sonic females from the cartoons, the games, the comics, if you will, that basically he gets involved with. And gets involved with in a very, kinky kind of way, depending, maybe even more so than that. And in this case, he gets involved with Julie Sue Echidna, who was a character created by Ken Penders to be Knuckles' significant other, his love interest, his soulmate, in the Archie Sonic books. And here in this story, she is married to Knuckles. Well, technically she's married to him, as the official comic, when it was out, would officially evolve. Basically, the relationship was more borderlining on the fact that they were, married. And then, of course, you had the future storyline of Mobius years later where technically they were. But anyway, in this story, this adult NFSW story of the erotic kind, she is married to Knuckles. But what's the premise of the story, you might ask? Well, the premise is real simple. See, Tails, as it's described in the sequel I'm going to talk about, Tails, is staying with them for a week because his house has to be worked on, has to be rebuilt, made over, if you will, because I think something happened. I've got to go back and look. But he ends up staying with them for a week. And what happens is it's during this time that Julie Sue has certain urges she needs to be, she needs to have, I should say, taken care of. She has certain urges that she needs to, take care of herself, but more than likely would want someone else to help her with those urges. And despite being married to Knuckles, he doesn't, according to the story, and according to Julie Sue in the story, he doesn't register like he used to. Like when they were dating, like when they first got married, it basically, his registering of, oh, she wants to have some fun, quote unquote, it's not there. So what happens is very conveniently, as I mentioned, Tails ends up staying with them for a week because he's invited by Knuckles to stay with them for a week while his place gets worked on. And while he's with them, he learns, how to do some cooking, like cooking certain meals, courtesy of Knuckles and Julie Sue. And he helps make some repairs around the house. Certain things that, at times Knuckles won't have time to get to because he has a job, and, Julie Sue, being herself, is cleaning the house, kind of keeping it in order, and she has her own little thing on the side, I believe. But anyway, to get to the point, Julie Sue, like I said, has these urges that no matter how much he tells or hints at Knuckles, hey, I want to have some fun to get these urges taken care of, he doesn't register. But since Tails is there and he is of age, 18 and older, she looks at it as an opportunity to be like, hey, if Knuckles won't satisfy my urges, I know a certain two-tailed fox that will. And basically, through some coaxing and some flirtatious convincing, she's able to get Tails to satisfy those urges, for her. Now, the one thing I do like about some of these stories, depending on who puts them out, Cyborg Fox, MadeInNowhere, or whoever else, one of the things I do like about the story, or these kind of stories I should say, is mainly the fact that Tails will get a little conflicted. Tails will get a little conflicted, but once he finds out, the reasoning as to why the female wants to do the deed with him, he's more than willing to do it. And in this case, Julie Sue basically lays out, hey, I'm not looking for love. I just want to get, some fun, some real fun taken care of. And that she wants, a man to, who knows how to have the same kind of fun she does to, do it with her. And Tails at first a little reluctant. And again, after some convincing, flirtatiously and straight up, and coaxing, flirting, and straight up, Tails is like, well, I haven't had the touch of a woman in a long while, and I'm, living even for a week temporarily under the same roof, with a beautiful female echidna that wants to do the deed, and he's thinking about it, and after more convincing, straight up and flirtatiously, Tails does agree, what the heck, let's do it, and they end up doing the deed. And it sometimes, in some of the moments in the original story, it does seem to borderline at times almost, on kinky BDSM. And I'm not joking. You read the story, which you could find at archiveofurown.org, at MadeInNowhere's page, and you look at it probably over at inkbunny.net, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I won't post the links here because even though they won't have images leading to them, I don't want to get in trouble, if you know what I mean. But anyway, he basically agrees to do it, and like I said, their time together, during certain moments of the story, borderlines almost on kinky BDSM. And what I mean by that is Julie Sue has this scarf that she uses to kind of drag Tails while she's kissing him over to the couch and everything, along with her hand. She uses it to keep his head in place in a certain, bottom region of hers, if you know what I mean. That's why she has the scarf, for those, several reasons. But then Tails, after she drops the scarf on his head very seductively, he takes the scarf and later on just ties her hands together so he can have a bit more control. And that's what I'm talking about, where it kind of gets, on the borderlining of kinky BDSM. Then, another example is when Tails is giving it to her good, doggy style, as they would call it. He's giving it to her good. Basically, she buries her face in the couch. She buries her face in the couch, moaning. And then here's the second example of what I mean by it kind of being on that borderline of kinky BDSM. He basically pulls her dreadlock, her hair, if you will, from the back to pull her head up from the couch to hear her. So that's the second time. And then the third time, kind of in between it, is when he kind of gives her a little bit of a light spank, on the rear, if you know what I mean. So yeah, not a hard one, because again, this is something they're doing with Knuckles not knowing, because Knuckles at this time is at the store, because he likes to cook, he likes to eat like Tails, so he's at the store for a couple of hours as well as doing some other stuff, and basically, they're taking this opportunity to do all this while he's gone. So Tails, like I said, that third example of borderlining kinky BDMS, or BDSM, I should say, that third time, like I said, that takes place in between the hair pulling, and the tying her hands, her wrist up with the scarf kind of thing. Basically, he does like a little light spank on her rear, not too hard, because, if he does it hard enough, that's going to leave evidence enough for, Knuckles to be like, okay, where did you get that? Unless Julie Sue wears pants, which I'm sure she would, just to cover it until it goes away. But anyway, they do the deed. There's several times that they do kiss, like when they first start doing it, when Julie Sue is taking him over to the couch, and after he unties the scarf from her wrist and everything. And let's just say the one thing I kind of enjoy, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that kind of enjoys this, is you never know what the outcome's going to be once they have their big moment, if you know what I mean. Because basically, because what happens here is Julie Sue. Julie Sue has her moment, and then Tails afterwards has his. But it's not in the way you think. Instead, because they want to be careful about what's going on, they want to be careful about what's going on, Julie Sue basically helps him with his moment by giving him what's known as a BG. And that's about it. She ends up giving him a BG, and, the rest is history. But again, what's crazy about it is that some of the stories I've read from MadeInNowhere, from the Cyborg Fox and others, Tails usually has this big moment take place within the body, if you know what I mean, of the female he's getting it on with. He's doing the deed with. And sometimes it's described as, once he does that, he's got little fellas, if you will, heading towards a certain egg to, help, make it grow or help it to hatch, if you know what I mean. And sometimes it's just left at, he's just, exploded within the female, but that's about it. Nothing else. There's no, aftermath, consequences. But sometimes there is. And that's where we get the sequel here, because I was inspired to do this sequel by a request that was given to the Cyborg Fox. See, the Cyborg Fox did another story I talked about called Southern Fox 11. And he did this story. I don't know if it was requested by MadeInNowhere or not. I have to go look. But basically, in this story, as I've talked about before, Bunny gets Tails of age to take care of her urges. Because Antoine, even though she's married to him like she is in the Archie Sonic books, Antoine doesn't want to degrade himself to having to satisfy her urges, if you know what I mean. So she goes to Tails. Tails helps her out. Again, even though he's a little reluctant, he does finally relent and be like, you know what? She's too smoking, if you know what I mean, too smoking to not say yes to. And he basically, like I said, he relents. They do the deed and everything. They get a little borderline kinky BDSM too, themselves. But, that's about it. That's about it. But there is a consequence, because unlike with Julie Sue and Tails, Julie Sue helps Tails with his moment by giving him a BG, so, he has a place to, be satisfied, he has a place to let go in, outside of the obvious. Here, the exact opposite happens, because Tails ends up, exploding, if you will, letting go within Bunny in a certain area, in a certain, genitalia region, if you know what I mean. And, the original story, trying to find the right word to say here, the original story, just ends with them parting ways, Bunny ensuring Tails that Antoine won't find out, and then that's it. But you think to yourself, you read that ending, and you read that moment where Tails lets loose within Bunny, through the bottom region, if you know what I mean. And you say to yourself, well, shouldn't that mean maybe he just gave her 9 months to go before, before New Life, debuts? You think to yourself, didn't he just give her, 9 months to go before New Life debuts? You wonder that because it's not indicated, that she's on a certain medication to ensure something like that doesn't happen. So what happens is Cyborg Fox gets a request to do a sequel years later called Southern Foxy Consequences, Southern Foxy Consequences, that's the word I'm trying to find. He gets a request to do the sequel, and it's here where basically the answer is yes. Tails did give her 9 months to go before New Life debuts. Because whoever requested the sequel, again, I don't know if it's MadeInNowhere or somebody else, basically they saw exactly what I and others saw. They're like, wait a minute. Well, not saw, but read, I should say. They read what I and others saw, and they're like, wait a minute. It's not indicated that Bunny was on medication, like another story he did based on Tails and Bunny. So, it's like, wait a minute. There's no indication that she was on a certain medication to prevent, the inevitable. Maybe we could work that out, into a story. And that's what they did. They requested Cyborg Fox to continue the story, kind of have an aftermath, but also kind of, in a way, give both Tails and Bunny a happy ending and teach Antoine a lesson of, hey, you're going to be married to this woman. There's an old saying of happy wife, happy life. Well, guess what? Because you didn't keep her happy and satisfy her when she needed to be satisfied, now you're going to pay the price by losing her to a two-tailed friend. And even though at first some would be unhappy about it, once they understood what the reasoning was, there's no doubt they'd be siding with them. So basically, that's what inspired me as an anonymous, that's what inspired me under the alias of Anonymous, because they do ask you if you want to be name dropped or remain anonymous, and I tell them, hey, just have me remain anonymous, and let's just go from there. And that's what's happened with a couple of stories I've had requested and made into a reality. So anyway, MadeInNowhere, this is the second one he's done for me. The first one he did was Tails and Bernadette, which, of course, I requested to both him and Cyborg Fox. Cyborg did his years later, which I appreciated. I like to take on his as well. But anyway, the Southern Foxy Consequences is what inspired me, to want to see a sequel done. It's what inspired me to want to see a sequel done and everything. And basically, what I said is, well, what happens afterwards? And I'm just checking outside, seeing a cat walking across our yard. My mom doesn't want some cats on the yard or anything because they might do their business. But anyway, getting back on topic, Southern Foxy Consequences, like I said, inspired me to want to see a sequel get made, because I'm thinking, okay, what happens next? Because all we're given in the original, my friend's wife, is, just the first night, of the week. What about the other nights? So I went to MadeInNowhere. I said, keep me anonymous, but I would like to see, a sequel. I would like to see a sequel, if you will. And they said, okay, no problem. We went over the details and everything. We went over the details. And even though it took a while, because I requested this back in August of last year, even though it took a while, it did eventually come out, and when it came out was this past Monday. And what I saw, I was actually cool with. I mean, true, it was not exactly what I was hoping for, in certain things. I mean, one of the ideas I had for them was for Julie Sue to submerge completely under a bubble bath that they would take, and then pop out completely covered in bubbles from head to toe and be like, I'm the bubble bath monster or mistress or whatever. I have to go back and look at my notes of what I wanted originally to see. But what they gave me, I thought was pretty good. For example, the way they started out was, and it's called A Wild Week with My Friend's Wife. That's what it's called, Wild Week with My Friend's Wife. And the way they made it turn out story-wise is Knuckles finds out that, he has to work overtime by his boss, because he's got a regular job now and everything. And he finds out, like I said, he has to work overtime for his boss. So Julie Sue, still keeping everything a secret, keeping appearances up, not letting Knuckles suspect a single thing about what's going on. She lets Tails know as she goes and takes a shower, after Knuckles gets home. She lets Knuckles know, hey, I ordered pizza and everything. She again tries to hint that, hey, maybe a certain funness might, relieve you of your stress, but that doesn't work. So she basically, like I said, she keeps it cool. She keeps it cool and everything. She lets like I said, she lets Knuckles know that, she ordered pizza. He's cool with that. She turns the TV on for him. Basically just acts like a normal, kind, sweethearted wife towards him. But what she does afterwards, she goes and takes a shower. And it's during the shower, she lets Tails know about what's happening, just also check in on him, see how things are going, but also to let him know that, hey, some time has passed since we've had our fun, because it is indicated, that they did have some fun that first initial week, and because they did, they've decided, hey, let's just keep doing this and everything. And so they try to find the opportune times to do it. And now Julie Sue is like, you know what? It's been a while since we've had our fun, longer than I would want, and I'm sure he would want. I'm going to let him know. So she contacts him while she's in the shower, or before she gets in the shower, and she lets him know that, she lets him know, I'm trying to find the right word to say here. She lets him know about Knuckles' situation, his job situation, as well as, like I said, checking in on him to see how things are going. But yeah, she lets Tails know about Knuckles' job situation, and Tails is like, okay, cool, that sounds great. Let's see what happens. And what they've been doing prior, after the first initial week that they started doing this, and it's indicated in between time-wise, is basically they would send dirty pictures to each other, very adult NFSW pictures to each other to get each other going, if you know what I mean, or get them to kind of let off a little steam. And basically that's what they do here, because again, after she lets him know about the situation, Tails is like, that's cool and everything. And then he requests her, hey, can you send me a NFSW picture of yourself as well to kind of get me going, and I'll send you one in return. And that's what they do. So basically the first week comes around, or the first couple of days, I should say, of Knuckles having to work overtime comes around. Julie Sue contacts Tails while Knuckles, is away, like on the second day of it or something, or after Knuckles comes home and goes to bed. Julie Sue lets Tails know, hey, this is what's going on, because she's trying to gauge, like, what the time is. She's trying to figure out, okay, what's the time frame where Tails can come, we can have our fun, and then, he can leave before Knuckles shows up. So she kind of pinpoints it to an hour and a half to 2 hours. So she lets Tails know, and Tails basically is like, okay, that's cool, but let's give it one more week. Play it by ear, because you don't know. You don't know if this may vary. And Julie Sue is cool with that. And to kind of, pass the time, they send very NFSW texts to each other, as well as pics. And once it's pretty much figured out that, yeah, the hour and a half, 2 hour overtime range is, the exact time frame they need, or that is needed, she lets Tails know, and they work it out, like, okay, the upcoming week, because we don't know how long the overtime thing is for Knuckles in the story, but the upcoming week, which is like 2 weeks after she lets him know, that's when they're going to have their fun. At least that's what it's implied at, like almost 2 weeks after. They're going to have their fun. And Julie Sue definitely is looking forward to like the first day, because she finds out that Knuckles is not only going to be working overtime, but that he's also going to stop at the store to get a few items and do a few other things. So, long story short, she lets Tails know about it. Tails shows up, and they start having a little fun. And they have fun in the bathroom. Because what she's done, and oh, by the way, when he shows up, the first thing they do is make out, of course. But anyway, she leads him to the bathroom, shows that she's drawn a huge bubble bath for them. But before they get even in the bubble bath, they kind of basically get it on right then and there. She undresses him, she undresses herself, and let's just say they basically get into the mood way before they get into the bath, and then they do eventually get in the bath, and then that's where they conclude their fun at. And Julie Sue does submerge, a couple of times, a little further and further under the water and under the bubbles to give Tails a BG before, really letting loose. And unlike the original story, she does allow him to let go within her, within her bottom region, if you know what I mean. She lets him go and be, explosive within her bottom region, and there is no consequences that are going to come of it, because she does let him know that she's on the pill. She lets him know she's on the pill, the medication, if you will, that I alluded to earlier. She's on the medication, and so that for the rest of the week, or the rest of that week, I should say, every time Tails comes over and they do the deed, he's going to be allowed, because she's on this medication, to let loose. She's going to be allowed to be, or he's going to be, I should say, allowed to let loose within her. And I think that's pretty cool. Like, hey, we're going to go full on, pure rawness, if you will, because I'm taking the medication that's going to prevent any effect, or after effect, anyway. So yeah, the story was pretty cool. Like I said, they do the deed. She encourages Tails to, get himself dried off and get ready to leave, because obviously they're paying attention to the time, like, Knuckles is going to be home very soon. You got to get out of here. So that's what happens. That's how the original story that MadeInNowhere did as a sequel to Cyborg Fox's story concludes. Basically, it's indicated that they're going to continue the thing for the rest of the week, and that's about it. And what I do like about it is how, you have Tails basically, being, I guess you could say, the voice of reason. Like, okay, if we're going to do this, make sure that the time frame of Knuckles' overtime, coincides with coincides with the time frame we need. So I like the fact that he's like, hey, let's give it one more week, see what happens. And, it works out in their favor, because now they realize, hey, if we can do the deed with each other, we could do it during the time he's gone. And then by the time we notice, okay, he's about to, get close to coming home, Tails can exit stage right. Now, what's interesting about this is, as I've alluded to in some on-camera and audio videos, I myself utilize the AI writing app known as Sudo Write. That's SUDOWRITE. So I use that, and what's interesting is you can actually copy and paste. Any of the stories that you find on archiveofourown.org or fanfiction.net. You can copy and paste any of the stories, put them on a writing app like Sudo Write. Put them on a writing app like Sudo Write, and basically add your own extension to it if you want to. And that's what I did. Because there were some stories some ideas, I should say. There were some ideas I wanted to have made into, have included into the story. There were some ideas I wanted to have included into the story, but, we worked it out to where, some of those ideas did not really float with MadeInNowhere's point of view of things when it comes to these stories. So what I did is I copied and pasted the story, placed it on Sudo Write, and then used the guided tool under the WRITE write section on the left-hand corner of the screen. I used that, like I said, clicked on it, went to guided, and added in some ideas I wanted to see as extensions. Now, true, I didn't get exactly what I wanted, and I would have to copy and paste my ideas and put them into the story myself, but sometimes I did get something as to what I want. I did get something as to what I want and everything. And what I thought end result wise and everything, I thought was good. I thought it was, really good. Weird, maybe in the eyes of some, but really good. Because one of the ideas originally that I had for MadeInNowhere to include into the story was Tails and Julie Sue using a formula, or in this case a Chaos Emerald originally, to fuse into one. to fuse into one and really, get it really get pleasure from being one individual called Tails Sue. That's TAILE-SU. And that was my idea. And MadeInNowhere is like, yeah, I don't think so. It's like they probably thought, okay, it sounds like a good idea, but it's a little too weird for my taste. So I figured, okay, fine, no problem. And that's why, as I mentioned, I copied and pasted the idea or the story once it was done, and he uploaded it. I copied and pasted it, put it over to Do Right, and started adding in the ideas I wanted to see. For example, one of the other ideas, now this is an idea I didn't give him originally, but I figured I'll just add it in. One of the ideas, one of the ideas I added in here, not what I suggested to him, back in August, but it's an idea I looked at and said, I'll just add it here, and that is mummification. And basically, it's a kink, a BDSM kink, if you will, where somebody gets completely mummified. And you can find that, believe it or not, on a lot of uploading sites like the YT, Rumble, and so on. Anyway, I figured, why not have that take part in the story, or in the extended version I want to, add to, the extended part I'm adding on to, I should say. So I said, okay, let's have Tails mummify her, from head to toe, covering every inch, and that's what I had made. And then I basically had it described, and it was kind of 50-50 between me and the AI app, if you will. But the way I had it described is he would do this, and instead of being like completely bound, like immovable and everything, I made it basically to where she was mummified completely, head to toe, every inch covered. And Julie Stu started to do a dance, doing the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, very sensually, humming that tune, humming the tune of da-da-da-da-da-da, very sensually. So I put that in, and then I put something else in as well. So I was just double checking, but yeah, it was the fusion, and then before that, the mummification. But then what's interesting is, we fast forward to the ending part that I added as part of the extension, and the fusion basically caused a bit of an after effect with Tails. And I did this before in another story that I used to do right to create between him and Bernadette, to where basically the end result of the fusion basically being basically a combination, a merger of both of them with both male and female parts, if you know what I mean. Basically, the end result was Tails turned into the female version that a lot of fans like to draw him as, known as Tails Co. And the way this happens in this story is the fusion known as Tails Sue, if you will, that's TAILIE-SU. What she does is she takes the male portion, and that's she and her with an SHI and HIR. They take the male version, or male part, the bottom male part, if you will, of the merger, and inserts it into the female bottom part of the fusion. And let's just say it causes an effect to where basically it's going to be an expection, 9 months later, but also because of that causes when they defuse, when they demerge back into two, causes Tails to end up turning into a female version of himself called Tails Co. because of what's going to occur within the next 9 months, story-wise. And yeah, they do end up having some lesbian interaction, if you know what I mean. They do have some kinky lesbian interaction, if you know what I mean. But after that, the one thing I added to end the story on is because Tails Co. is Tails, but now female form for the time being, he is able to use a, holographic cloaking device to disguise them as their other self. In other words, Tails Co. is able to disguise herself as Tails and also hide the fact that her and Julie Sue are going to be having some company within the next 9 months. As a result of what the fusion did, if you know what I mean. But yeah, that's what I did with the help of the AI writing apps to do right, I added in an extension to the story, added in what I wanted to have originally with the fusion, as well as added in a few other tidbits that I didn't have originally suggested to MadeInNowhere with the mummification and then the gender bender situation, and all that. But anyway, outside of my extending of the story, which you can also find at archiveofourown.org. You can find me under BW Roses 98 there, if you want to. That's BW Roses, BWROSAS 98. It's all one word. Outside of that, where you could find it, it will go up there soon. I thought, again, the story was pretty good. I thought the original take on it by MadeInNowhere, the sequel, to Cyborg Fox's story, I thought was pretty good. I enjoyed what I saw, or read, I should say. I enjoyed what I read. And I like the fact that if you just leave it as the original story, sequel that MadeInNowhere made, it does open the door for more sequels, for more, opportunities down the line, not just for myself, but other writers, not other writers, but other fans to request maybe a continuation. But that's all I'm going to really say, guys, on it. I do suggest checking out MadeInNowhere at inkbunny.net and archiveofourown.org, archiveofourown.org, AO3, if you will, as well as check out the Cyborg Fox, the man that originally requested the story that I had the sequel done to. I'm also, like I said, at archiveofourown.org at BW Roses 98. Again, that's BWROSAS 98, one word. And you also can find me at inkbunny.net under the same name as well. But anyway, though, guys, I just wanted to come on here and talk about that. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Comment in the live chat if you're listening, watching on YouTube. And until then, I am out.